Sound checking, 1, 2, 3, yay. And this one. Good morning, dear friends. Welcome. Hello to those of you joining us on the internet. Thank you. Seeing the living decorations come in reminds me to thank all of our volunteers. How many? Please raise your hand if you do some volunteering or have done some volunteering thing here at PMC. Yeah. That's how it works. I guess it's... And when we volunteer, when we participate, even to wash a window or two, we gain ownership of the place. And in fact, this is something I've learned over the last 15 years in my role in a nonprofit. We actually do own this building. All of us. It's not mine, it's not... The board has responsibility for it, but it belongs to the Portland Insight Meditation Community, a 501c3 registered church, nonprofit in the federal tax system. And it truly does belong to everyone who participates. And way back at the beginning of our incorporation in the year it was 1900? No, it was 2000. It feels like that. It was 2000, and we had a big decision to make. There was a checkbox on the application for the tax status. Would we be no, it was actually for the registration for the state. Would we be a membership organization or a non-membership organization? And we chose non because we recognize some of us, and many of the people who come through these doors, have been really burned by membership organizations. You have to belong. And to belong, you have to pay so much and so on. That's not at all. We belong here because of participation. It's very cool, I think. Anybody here for the first time? Hi. Hello. I hope that this turns out to be a very valuable morning for you, that getting up was really worthwhile in coming. Sunday morning. So in the way that I often like to begin, please, if you wish, just remain silent and sitting if you want. But otherwise, turn to a neighbor and introduce yourself simply. And then I have a different question this morning than I often ask, which is, how do you know that you're alive? If you'd share that a little bit. How do maybe from the I statement, how do I know that I'm alive? And you introduce yourself and then say that to your partner. And we'll be just 3 or 4 minutes max. This is, oh, there it is. There's always such a cacophony when you set meditators loose. I came here to sit and be silent. So, also in keeping with a 2,500-year-old practice, the refuges. In what can I take refuge? And the tradition says, why not take refuge in being awake, in that which is awake? I recently had the profound privilege of, actually a week ago today, he died, of sitting many hours with a friend who was dying, and it was so remarkable and interesting, as it is always, that which was alive and speaking and emoting and everything was gone. And then there was this cooling piece of matter without anybody home. Now that's strange, don't you think? And all of us in the room, when I would look at his face, out of the corner of my eye, I'd see his breath happen. And I've had that happen many times in that circumstance. And it's so, it's just wrong that a body always breathes. There's always a subtle movement. And so the mind created the perception of that. It was really interesting. So, taking refuge in that which is awake. Now, what happened to that awakeness? Where did that go? I have no idea. And the teachers that I revere the most, that I actually knew personally, also had no idea. There's the teachings that say we know, but what do we really know? What do I really know anyway? I haven't died yet, at least some would say this time. But I do know that there's something conscious right here, and that it can know that it exists. We can be mindful of being awake. And that's one way to think of the refuge in the Buddha. And then there's the refuge in the Dharma, taking refuge in the teachings, the path, but more fundamentally taking refuge in what actually exists. What is it that I, quote, know? Is things like, is anything permanent? Can I buy enough stuff or have enough experiences to be lastingly satisfied? So refuge in the Dharma, and then refuge in the Sangha, refuge in community, that which supports us, and in the community of our forebears who have practiced in this very same way and come to some place of great peace and ease and compassion and love. And speaking of Sangha, some of you no doubt weren't here last week. I want to thank this community again for the extraordinary support that I felt in every possible way through my brain surgery and now it's coming up on 7 weeks of recovery. And Melanie, thank you again for creating the Caring Bridge site. And it was really helpful to especially in the hell realm of the first 2 days post-surgery, when just barely holding on to sanity was an achievement. And one of my thoughts was, there's a lot of people out there that are thinking of me and caring about me. And that was very comforting. Really, it's very helpful. So I'm a firm believer in the fact that we really need each other. It's not really optional. And that, so I thank all of you for that. Food appeared magically at our door. It was amazing. So please join in as makes sense for you. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. And once more, I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. There is a body. How do we know that? What is it, or how is it that you experience this that we call my body? Sensations. What are the predominant sensations in your experience of this body? Contact with the cushion or the chair? The life in the hands and fingers and thumbs? The life of the lips, cheeks, face? Perhaps there's some pain somewhere. Some recent or long-term discomfort. Or maybe a delicious warmth or pleasant sensation. One of the great strengths of the Buddha's teachings is that we get to, or even have to, start exactly where we are. There are some foundational practices that have to do with developing some concentration and mindfulness. One of them is mindfulness of the body, and within the body, the fact of breathing, the experience of breathing. So how is it that you know that breathing is happening? How do you know at the level of the actual experience in sensations? There is that moment when, between breaths, there's no breathing. And then the need and impulse to breathe arise. And then there's an impulse. And then breathing in starts. And there's a way that awareness can rest in the sensations of breathing in. The sensations of the chest and abdomen rising, or the wind, the air coming in through the nostrils. Real phenomena, nothing to imagine. Breathing in until fullness. And then there's breathing out. The mind, of course, has a mind of its own. It's been deeply conditioned to wander, to worry, to plan, to remember, to strategize. When awareness springs into being in the midst of a wandering mind, there's an opportunity for a sort of choice in quotes. Once there's mindfulness, awakeness, one could choose whether to persist in this thought or emotion, or to relinquish it and let it pass away. If we do that, then what shall I do with the mind? And then the recommendation is, well, come home to the breath. And so we come home with as much intimate caring and gentleness as we can to the actual sensations of breathing in and breathing out. Noticing that each breath has a beginning. It has a rising to fullness, a decline, and then an ending. it does take a certain effort, doesn't it? There's the intention, I intend to come home to the breath and be awake to everything else. And then there's the falling into all kinds of different trance states, past, future, memories, plans, worries, desires. Mindfulness and the love and compassion that come with it are, I believe, the next step of human evolution. Joanna Macy calls it the step into the great turning, where we learn to live together in harmony. And so we're doing something personally very relevant here, but also something relevant at a species survival level. Practicing for the well-being of our loved ones and the well-being of our friends and neighbors. All this through awakening to what's happening in this moment. Each breath has a beginning. It has a rising to fullness, a reaching full, a declining, and then a disappearance. there is, of course, much more to us than these little bits of the body we're attending to. There's the feet and legs and back, and the pelvis, genitals, chest, fingers, arms, shoulders, eyes. There's the mind and its liking and disliking, wanting pleasure, wanting not displeasure, pain. There's all the various patterns of our personality, our predilections, our tendencies, our beliefs, our ideologies. And there's all the experiences of the sense doors, seeing and hearing and smelling and touching, and the very fact of thoughts. This journey of awakening ultimately includes opening and somehow or another developing equanimity to everything. And it starts right here, this moment, mindfully breathing, in a sort of analytic way, asking, who am I? What is this thing I call life? My life. So please notice now the contact of the body with the chair or the cushion. The life in the hands. Notice you can feel one finger at a time if you want, maybe the baby finger of the left hand. This awareness can be focused somehow. Notice the aliveness of your cheeks, your face, your lips. And then the eyes. Not an image of the eyes, but a glimpse, an embracing of the actual sensations of the eyes in their sockets. And then let the eyes move around a bit in there. Who's moving those eyes? How does it happen? And now let's allow the eyelids to open, which takes a certain effort and intention. And notice what happens. Seeing begins. Objects appear. Maintaining that stance or position of awareness. Seeing and knowing it. how does that knowing it happen? And let's take a moment to stretch, but not instantly. Notice, how is it that this cloud of sensations wants to move? And then ever so slowly let it happen. Present. Our formal meditation, kind of like going to the gym, is the sitting down and practicing. The intention is to become mindful in every activity. I just remembered a story somewhere in the suttas I learned years ago, decades maybe. 2 monks, morning, hungry, on their way to town with their begging bowls, and they get just to the edge of town, and one of them says to the other, "Oh, rats, I just lost mindfulness. I'm going to go back and start again." That'd be a little hard. We wouldn't get to go very far, would we? But it speaks of the determination to actually take this practice into life. And we have a great opportunity to do that, a step of that here, so to speak, with Jim Dalton, who will lead us in some movement. How mindful, how present can we stay in those movements? Yes?
We have a short developing here.
Is it breaking?
Dalton couldn't project all the way back to the back wall. So let's get in touch with our feet and sink and rise with your breath. Let the breath flow out as you sink. Come in gently as you begin and rise. Attending to the beginning of the rising and the ending, the beginning of the descent. Attending, just simple attending. Where do you start? Where does it end? Where does the complement start? The the opposite. Then we'll do that with the arms. Rising, where does it stop? Where does the descent stop? There's a little turnabout. Attending. Attending to sound. Technology is our friend, sometimes. So the research at Harvard Medical School began with this movement. Attending to beginnings, endings, stillness, and sinking. Then expanding that to the entire journey. Here's the beginning again, but then I'm with it, with it, with it, I'm with it. And there's the end, I'm with the descent. And if you're saying, I'm with it, I'm with it, I'm with it, you're doing it wrong. That was a comment directed towards James. It's not I, it's you. What if you just let it happen? The journey continues. How's that? There's attending to the beginning, to every stage of the journey, the end of the upward journey, and then attending, reaching across, focusing on the palm of your hand, let the other palm face the earth. This was the second gesture that Harvard researchers used, much more complicated. We're turning our wrists at the end of the gesture and getting into a position where they stay together. So there's precision, one thumb is up, one palm is down. Flow, precision. Turning, precision. The cloud moves across the sky, and the shadow is precisely underneath, following. The amazing order to the universe represented right here in this simple gesture. We're part of that order. Isn't that powerful? The order just flows through this nervous system in a gesture of precision and flow. What else do we need? Attending to the journey. An up and down journey, a turning. An up and down journey, and a turning. Resting, both arms hanging from the shoulders, tending to a standing body, a breathing body. How little effort can we put into attending? Raising the hands, taking a step, extending the arms, opening the arms. Now we have an image in the mind of stilling the waters of the heart. What happens when you still the waters of the heart? It's not just a movement in your hands or your arms or your shoulders, but the whole system participates in that stillness of the waters of the heart. You can't keep it in one place. It just flows through the whole life. filling the waters of the heart. Can you attend to the circles your hands are making, but not lose track of the weight shift? Attending. Present here, present here, present here. And pausing, hanging from the shoulders, the hands, arms, surrendering to gravity, attending to gravity. Attending to hearing, breathing, and then location. We're going to take a step towards the street and extend the arm that extends, the foot that extends towards the street, the arm that extends towards the street, and then pull down and back. Just feel the spine turning and stretching. Attending to the end, the beginning, the end, beginning, and then the journey between. See if you can feel the stillness when the gesture quits extending forward and starts to drop. Extending and dropping. Pausing, rocking, stepping towards the trees and extending that arm out, lifting up and pulling down. Pressing, turning, descending. The entire journey. It's ending now.
Test 1, 2.
Pay no attention to the man. We're attending, moving, all right, and stillness. Does it fit? Testing, testing. That's a ringing sound. A little bit high. Testing, testing. How about that? Still too high. Still too high. Rocking back and forth. I can't stop moving. How about this? There's not ringing. I don't hear the ringing. All right. We're going to step towards the street and push with the opposite hand. And then bring the opposite over and push. One foot's moving toward, or the weight's moving towards the street. That foot has the weight, that has the extension. The other hand is going across. So we have this precision. We know how to control a crossing movement. We know how to control a extending movement. And we can move the center of gravity. And we can attend to the whole brush knee gesture. This is the 5th thing that they taught at Harvard. And working on this for 10, 12 weeks, they developed tremendous concentration and mindfulness of movement that was healing in dozens of different ways. Pausing, we'll step towards the tree and again, the opposite hand extends, the other one comes across. If we're moving towards the tree, it's like we're throwing a ball. But that's a completely different movement than brush knee. And our nervous systems can keep track. All right, back to the center. We started with, well, I started this when Robert began to conclude the guided meditation and said we can attend to our feet, we can attend to lower legs, knees, hips, the whole length of the leg and the contact of fabric with our skin. We can come into the pelvis and then the spine rising out of the pelvis, the collarbone supporting the shoulders, and then the rib cage in between, moving as we breathe. So without any formal gestures, this body continues to move, and we can attend now to this river of motion, this river of sensation. We can let it flow all the way through from top to bottom, or we can systematically move step by step. But what we're working with is attending with precision and then attending to the journey between the points of contact. Consciousness makes contact with the knee, with the shoulder, with the fingers, with the arms, etc. How do I know I'm alive? My mind is constantly moving, my body's constantly moving, the sensations continue to flow. So, let's open our arms to the side, rise and come down the center. Different gesture to kind of integrate all the attending we've been doing and making an intention to follow the same attending to sensations, feelings, and thoughts the rest of the day. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Sangha. Can you hear me? No. No? Yeah, I'll use that. Good morning, Sangha. Can you hear me now? My name is Avi. I'm community coordinator here, and we're going to conduct the ancient ritual of announcements. Misty, who is our volunteer coordinator, would you like to come up and do some announcements about our need for volunteers?
Thank you. Hi, Katie. Yeah, as Avi said, my name is Misty, and I'm co-coordinator for volunteering here. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has been volunteering this year and who will be volunteering in the future. This community makes all the difference, and your effort makes this place run. So thank you very much.
Misty and Ipsia are the people to see if you feel like you want to deepen your relationship with PIMC and contribute to its progressing and maintaining. In addition, we also need a couple of housekeepers, I think. Yeah, and we can always use people to volunteer down in the Sunday Children's Education Program. For those of you who may not know, we have a Sunday Children's Program that allows parents to get the Dharma also. And we all have a vested interest in that, even those of us who do not have children, because we are guiding the next generation of meditators who will be sitting out there among us one day. And we would welcome anybody who wants to volunteer on a Sunday. If you've got a Sunday where you can spend an hour, great. If you could do it on a regular basis, even once a month, that would be great. You can go to the website, and there are instructions on how to get on the sign-up online, so you can just pick your day and do it, and we would really, really appreciate that. Other announcements. We do something called Dharma Consults, where if you have something coming up in your practice or you to developing a practice of your own, we will provide you some time with an experienced teacher. Jim is available to do that for about 20 minutes for 2 or 3 people today. So, Jim? See Jim after the Dharma talk. Some other odds and ends. Our library is going to reopen. We actually have a library. It has been mostly locked up for the last couple of years, but through the really dedicated efforts of Eliza and Connie, who have just been working really hard to catalog things and get things into some kind of order where it can work and guide processes, we are actually going to have the library again. So there are a few things that go along with that. First thing is, please set up a library account. You can go to the website. There are clear instructions how to do that. You'll get an easy-to-remember 3-digit code. When the library officially reopens, you will be able to take out books if you have a library account, and all you need to do is just fill out a little form with your name and your email address. That's it. Second thing is that we have, in the process of combing through materials, we have uncovered like a lot of things that the library unfortunately can't use, but they're still good materials. Lots of magazines and pamphlets and books on mindfulness and Buddhism and some other things. Those are out in the free bookshelves out there in the living room. Please take as many as you want. They are yours. You don't have to return them, and they will make space for other things that we can provide to the community. The other thing is we now have 2 drop-off places for library materials. So there is this box that exists out on the fence, out on Southeast 66. It's kind of hidden by a big bush. Is it over that way? Okay, it's over that way. And it's kind of hidden by a bush. But if when you get to taking books out and you want to return them and you don't want to come in, you can just slide them into that box. We also have a basket in the living room by the library door. The other thing is, some of you out there have books like in your bookshelves for years that are from the Barking Dog Library, and we are trying to gather all those lost children to come home. So if you have an awareness that you have old books from the Barking Dog Library in your collection, we won't scold anybody. There won't be any massive fines or anything. Just drop them off, and so we can recatalog them and make them available again. Other things that are coming up, just things on the calendar. Everything I'm going to mention is on the website. So we've got the annual New Year's Eve grief ritual and refuge ceremony with Robert and Gary. That's coming up on the 31st. The first Saturday retreat, the first one of the year, is coming up on January 4th. That's also with Gary. Then into the first week of January, we've got our monthly newcomer orientation session with Robert. We've got a winter class that's starting up, intermediate skillful speech, dealing with anger, which Doyle is going to be teaching. Doyle, are you around? Doyle is right there. He'd be happy to answer questions about that. We also have an end-of-life Doula 101 workshop that is coming up in a couple of Fridays. We have our second Sunday PIMC potluck coming up, and we have some winter classes. All this stuff is on the homepage of the website. So please look. We are also sending to you a digest into your email boxes that has all this information, so you don't even have to go to the website. You can just open up your email. When you get the digest, if you could please click on it and just give it a scan through, and that helps us know. Whoa. Wasn't you. Okay, good. Wasn't me. That helps us know who's out there, like, listening to us. It's sort of like, if you don't click, it's sort of like we drop a pebble into the well and we don't get anything back. And so we would love to know that you are on the other end of that digest. So thank you very much for being here today. Blessings on your day.
Thank you, sir. The elevator pitch.
Anybody here ever get angry? The rest of you liar, pants on fire. So if you've had a foundations or basics nonviolent communication training, have that under your belt already, you might want to consider coming out. We'll be meeting on the 4 Tuesday nights of January and delving into, the first 2 weeks will be about your own anger, and the second 2 weeks will be about what do you do in response to someone else's anger that may or may not be directed at you. And we'll have, this is going to be a pretty intense 4-week period. You're going to have exercises not only to do during the classes, but in between classes, and your homework will be checked. Or else I'll get angry. No. But your homework, it'll be really important for you to be mentally ready to really dive into this issue, this part of your life. And I think you'll find that the work that you do will bear a lot of really good fruit. So I look forward to seeing you all. Right now, I think we have 4 people signed up. So for me, that the class is a go. The more the merrier. So if you'd like, please sign up on the registration page or come see me and we'll get you in. Thanks.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's better. Can you hear me okay? Very handy for those moments of stop and flip. I have on occasion just about crashed on my computer, so there, that'll work. I guess a piece of business and gratitude. This community has responded really beautifully to our end-of-year fundraising. We actually reached our goal of $10,000, counting the matching grant. in order to fill our budget deficit from 2019. There's still a little while till the end of the year, and to set off into next year with a little bit extra would be wonderful. So please support your Dharma Center, this amazing place. You can do it through the Donna Bowl. You can do it online for the joining the Stewardship Circle. And it's a noble aspiration that we have. Here's a question I've never asked. Please raise your hand if you have experienced your life being profoundly influenced by PIMC. Take a look around. This is a node of consciousness. If there are places in the world where transformation occurs and healing happens, this is one of them. You know, we know about Lourdes and these famous places, but lives change here. And that's important to support. I think I'll start with the poem I wanted to share with you. This is awkward. Just thought of my teenagers. That was awkward, Dad. Awkward. Okay. William Stafford. How many of you heard William Stafford when he was here in town, when he was on the earth? He was the Poet Laureate of the United States for a year, and he lived here in town. One of the most gentle, famous people you could ever possibly meet. What's this called? I forget. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. That's quite a line, isn't it? Sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike, and as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail. But if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake. For a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world. And following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, for a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. A ritual we should read to each other. Thank you. This keeps falling down. Oh well. I find it interesting how the dates affect me. I'm thinking of this as the last Sunday of the year, which it is, but why it should be any different, I don't know. But I was reflecting yesterday, so what should I talk about tomorrow? And what came up was the law of karma and the question of, do we have any control in our lives? Is there such a thing as free will? And if I do have any control or influence, how does it arise? And it's a poignant question for me at this point. I can't remember if I talked about it last week, but just in brief, about 2 years older than I am now, my mother had a massive stroke and then spent 6 years in a nursing home, quite debilitated, profoundly debilitated. She finally got pneumonia, and for the third or fourth time, and they said, "Eleanor, if you take this pill, you'll likely get better." And the nurse said they heard her teeth slam shut across the room. It's like, enough. And so I have taken pretty good care of my exercise and my blood pressure, and I'm not profoundly depressed as my mother was. I'm not alcoholic like my mother was. And I had a magical belief that I was protected. And then I had a stroke 8 weeks ago, a little stroke. I can feel the effects of it. But my best intentions didn't protect me at all. Now, I didn't have a massive stroke, but I think it's magical thinking. Oh, and plus, there was the incidental finding on the CAT scan that I had a pretty large aneurysm that was actually fraying at the edges. You could see it. Had it been the aneurysm that blew, I would not be sitting here. And so that magical thinking and denial, it's things are more shaky. Things are, the truth of anicca is really true. And the fact that none of us know whether we're going to make it home today is true. I've taught this for decades, but it's somehow or another, it's truer. It's like, good grief. I should not have stayed on that airplane in Vancouver. I should have gotten out and gone to the hospital there, but it turned out fine. So, there are so many things over which we have no control. Politics, wars, other people. You know, there's the first step in the 12 steps. I came to really accept that I was powerless over alcohol, whatever, or over the addict in my life, or over the economy, or over that there's this coming to believe that we are not in control. As a way of recovering, in a way, from our desperate attempts to be in control. So let me see if I can remember that. And then there's this astounding, I don't know, maybe there can't be an adjective. There is a dialectic or a paradox in which we live. There is the infinite universe. Well, it's not infinite, I guess. It's bounded somewhere, but 14.2 billion years ago, there was this thing that happened, and ever since then, there's been these galaxies flying away from each other, and suns being born, and somewhere along there, the Earth formed, and then evolution occurred, and then you were born, and I was born. Out of nowhere, right? And as I saw recently with my friend, it's very temporary, and then we're gone. So one could say we're stardust and inconsequential and don't have the least idea what we really are. And one could then come to the conclusion, well, it's hopeless, and go into despair, and there's nothing I can do, and maybe become hedonistic, or maybe become despairing, and maybe end our lives. So that's one pole. And then there's this other pole where we are responsible for every single thought, every single emotion, and where we can actually change the course of our lives and the course of our friends' lives and perhaps the course of the community through our own paying attention and acting skillfully. That's a really interesting paradox, isn't it? Hopeless, despairing, why bother? To, whoa, I need to sit up straight. I need to pay attention because my life is of incredible consequence. And then we can get my delusion about not being subject to strokes. I had another insight into that last summer. I was riding my bike from Beaverton, my dog in the back, and sunny morning, and really moving along. And somehow this little light came on, this little insight emerged, and it was the same insight, which was, who am I fooling? Mostly me. I'm bicycling on my beautiful e-bike, without which I couldn't possibly do the ride. And I'm bicycling, and there's this thought behind it, which is, I'm 71 years old, I'm very fit, I'm traveling across the city. Clearly this means I won't have any more sickness, or aging, or heart disease, or strokes. But that had not come to consciousness before. It was just a little manipulative, magical thinking. I'll be fine. So there's this paradox. What do we have influence over? Note the change of word. Influence from control. And if you come from the West, you might have come along 52nd, and I don't know if the billboard is still the same, but there's that big sign that says, Jesus is the light of the world. And, well, the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, said that karma, the teachings on karma, are the light of the world. I think they're both right, actually, if one thinks of Jesus as that which is awake. It's a similar truth. But, and as I speak of this, I always remember a sutra in which, sutra being one of the teaching, one of the stories, that the Buddha was away elsewhere teaching, and he came back, and Ananda, his attendant for many, many years, and in many of the stories, a foil in the same way as this, he said, Lord Buddha, I was practicing while you were gone, and I really came to a deep understanding of the law of karma. I understand karma. And the Buddha to him said, not so fast, Ananda. Deep, difficult to understand, so gonna cool your jets. And so I say that with, here I am going to speak about the law of karma. So I'll try to have as much humility as I can. I'm trying to bring several threads together. I hope I can do it. First off, we use the wrong word for karma, or we have a profound misunderstanding. When someone has a car accident or a bad diagnosis or something, or maybe you win something, people tend to say, well, that's just your bad karma, or just your good karma. And the proper word is vipaka, V-I-P-A-K-A. Karma is an intentional action, or an action, that then bears fruit. And the fruit is what we're really interested in, aren't we? So, if I plant an acorn and things are all, or if I plant the tomatoes in my garden and things are well, and I remember to water them, I get tomatoes. The tomatoes are the vipaka of the intention of planting tomato plants. The teachings on karma are horribly misused a lot, maybe more than they are positively used. I have one story which was kind of a quintessential one, which was I was teaching a retreat and a woman came in very sad, and she had had 3 husbands die, and she was 32. And one was through cancer, one was through heart attack, and the other one was in a kind of a seaplane crash. This was up in Canada. He was a commercial seaplane pilot. And she'd been told by more than a handful of people intending to be helpful, why do you keep marrying men who will die young? Why are you choosing this in your life? Now that's patently insane. But these were 2 of them were mental health professionals who had probably read that little horrid book, The Secret, which is, I could tell you my moral and ethical dilemma with The Secret. I was on my way to Hollyhock one time during the burgeoning of that, and there was one, in the airport, there was one of these book displays that stuck out into the corridor, and I was having a cup of coffee over here, and there was the books, and there was a trash can about 10 feet away, and I had this, should I rescue people from reading that book? And it wouldn't be stealing, but anyway, I decided that I didn't want to get arrested, and it would probably be morally and ethically wrong, but such is my feeling about that little book. It's not totally wrong, because what we think about and intend does have an influence on it, because then we act. But back to my point. There's a profound teaching from the Buddha. It's called the 12 Steps of Dependent Origination. And I just want to grab one little piece of it, which is that there's no telling what's going to pop up in the mind. Have you noticed how crazy it is? I mean, you can be sitting calmly and up will come an old memory or a plan or a strong emotion. And so there's no telling what's going to pop up. The past has conditioned this moment. And then there's another step, or another something happens, co-arises with this, which is feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or indeterminate. We can like it, we can dislike it, or there's a not really caring. And that happens with every sense impression. So phenomenon arises, could be a physical experience, a visual experience, a mind experience. Phenomenon arises, Vedana, or feeling, occurs, and then craving arises. I want, if it's a thought, oh, there's a nice piece of chocolate sitting on my desk. I want it. Or this is an unpleasant feeling. I don't want it. Or I hardly notice. And then the next step from craving is grasping, reaching out and taking, noticing the thought and then continuing the thought, or noticing the emotion and continuing the emotion, and then I want it, and then the next one is, I've got it wrong, craving, grasping, becoming, grabbing for it, doing it. In the 12 Steps of Dependent Origination paintings, it's that reaching for the fruit. A monkey reaches for the fruit, and then the next scene is becoming, and that's a pregnant woman, and then the next one is birth, and then it's sickness, old age, lamentation, death, and despair. But that's all in the future. What's happening in the present moment is this phenomenon of exposure, liking, disliking, craving, grasping. And this is where we live our lives. I once spent a night with Achan Buddhadasa, that would have been nice, with Ruth Denison, listening to a tape of Achan Buddhadasa, one of the very famous last generation monks in Thailand, on feeling this liking and disliking, and then the grasping phenomenon. And that's what runs the world. It runs all of our actions. So enter, mindfulness. If there's no mindfulness, there's no intervention. That's funny. I always think of this same true story. Many of you have met my little white dog, Budo, who's been coming with me here since we founded the center, really. And on several occasions, I've sat him down at the back door and talked with him about this habit he has of chasing the squirrels. I mean, it's karmically not skillful, because I know what he would do if he caught the squirrel. They are not playing. It's the savannah. It's wild out there. And he sits there and he pretends to listen to me. And then I open the door and he's out like a rocket. And he's not learning. So I've actually done that 4 or 5 times just to see. But he can't learn. He doesn't have the capacity to learn at that level. He'll never stop being a squirrel killer. He is uncivilized. We, on the other hand, unless we're too damaged, and that damage can happen genetically, and it can happen in the first year or 2 of our lives, hence this line that's not wanting to come up. Unless we're the horrible effects of childhood can come out through the hole in the dike. We've all been profoundly affected by our childhood experiences. Even the most loving of families wind up contorted. And some of us didn't have parents who were so capable of loving, and who were isolated and poor and subject to violence. But for those of us who were not so badly damaged, we can intentionally, it seems, increase our capacity to witness or be mindful of that which is arising out of the unconscious, the phenomena that are occurring in our lives. We can somehow cultivate the capacity to tease open this moment, this, and to tease open and to notice, that hurt. I like that. I like that thought. I don't like that thought. And then our craving, our wanting it, I want to have it or I don't want to have it. We're capable of becoming aware. How the heck do we do that? And that's the entirety of the Buddhist teaching. Examine your worldview. Learn about the law of karma and the three characteristics of existence: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and that the self is a process. Look at your intentions. What is it you intend to do in our lives? What is it we intend to do in our lives? Is our highest goal to become powerful and wealthy, or is it to become loving? Is it to become mindful? Is it to become wise? And then how do we use speech? What are our actions like in the world? How do we use intoxicants? What's our livelihood about? This is the Eightfold Path. What are the efforts that I make inside my own head? What am I striving toward? Then there's the development of mindfulness and concentration. All of this is in service of this moment when, how awake can I be? How awake can I be to watch what's arising, and then, back to the law of karma, what seeds do I plant? Right? When that anger Doyle was talking about, when that anger arises, and anger is a very essential part of us because it's what mobilizes us to defend ourselves. It's the first, but then I can be a reactive person who gets angry, and then of course I can't stop my mouth or my texting or my tweeting or my whatever, however I'm acting in the world. Or something comes in and it's very upsetting, and since there's no capacity to really observe the upsetness, I become a terribly upset person. And there's no moderation, or there's no self-soothing. So then there really is the question, does meditation really work? Does it, in fact, transform one's character over weeks, months, years? Can we become more loving, more patient, wiser? Let's have a vote. Who's experienced that and believes it? That's pretty stunning, isn't it? In fact, sometimes when people say, how will I know if my meditations are working? I think of this, I've heard this a number of times. Well, I call my mother at 5 o'clock every Sunday afternoon. And every week we've had the same conflict. But I keep calling her because I know I should. But then last week, I've been meditating for maybe 6 weeks. Last week, I noticed, I was somehow watching myself, and my mother said the same old thing. And instead of going with I saw the reactivity. I saw what I wanted to say. And instead, I just stayed quiet. And we had a different conversation. That's pretty amazing. Right? That which was previously, the reactivity which was previously unobservable and unconscious, became conscious. In a way, what I'm speaking of here is of taking our meditation significantly or way beyond stress management and relaxation and the beginnings of psychological well-being. It's actually the recognition that we can transform ourselves remarkably. Not that my experience has certainly been there doesn't seem to be an end to the challenges for what comes up. And the challenge that I had a few weeks ago when I was so drugged out on the anesthesia from 6 hours of surgery, but then they also put me on an anti-seizure medication that drove me insane. Finally, they got me off it. And there was no capacity to, the witness, the capacity of observing was gone. And quite intentionally during surgery, you really don't want that much there. Hello there, you've cut a hole in my skull. That's very interesting. I think could I look at the monitor? But then what happened was relatively soon, the mindfulness started creeping back in, and then there was, oh, wow, look at that. Look at how crazy I've been. So I have an image of those blow-up dolls. In fact, I should get one for my grandson. There's these blow-up dolls. They have sand in the bottom, and they get about this, and then you hit them, and they go down, and you come up. That increasingly, mindfulness becomes our default position. One of the reasons that we require Sangha is so that we can have people to talk about such things with, so that we don't lose heart with the times that you fly across the country and visit your family, and bam, you're back in the same neurotic patterns. Right? The family emotional system swallows you, but then maybe the next time you make one little small change and you succeed at it. And that slowly we, quote in Carl Jung's word, we individuate. We develop our sense of individuality and our capacity to not go with the impulses that arise within the family system. People often, traditionally it's taught, speak of the law of karma in terms of you want to plant good seeds, so that you get a good rebirth. And that implies that one knows or believes that there are future lives. And some of us get hung up on that because we may not know that. And believing anything is a little bit shaky or unpleasant or intolerable. But does it matter? Here's my plate. This is an analogy from Ram Dass, who passed away a few days ago. Here's my plate. Well, how will I deal with what's on my plate? I want to get a good rebirth, or in the next 30 seconds, I want to have a good rebirth. It's someone's fired something at me and hurt arises and anger, and then there's the impulse to fire back. Or I could take a deep breath, take Doyle's course and learn some strategies. But without awareness, I can't choose. I can't decide which impulse to feed and which one to restrain. It's that, that wolf story that went around, the grandmother, the kid says, it's the whole thing. Which wolf do you feed? Which aspect of our being do we feed? And that's the law of karma. And it's a lifetime job, isn't it? To shape who we become next year and the year after, and to shape who we are in a relationship. There's one more thing I want to say. This was back when I first encountered nonviolent communication. And I was in a relationship at that time in which there was lots of conflict. And I think we were both kind of mean to each other with what we said, maybe very. And there was a moment when she said something really nasty and critical, and I felt the hurt. And I was able to say, ow, that hurt. Huge moment. Because the movement toward self-defense didn't happen in that particular moment. So in that moment, I was born as a person who could speak my pain directly rather than a person who had to go to my defensive structures. That's a really good rebirth. One other example was back during the that horrible tsunami, that I was looking at pictures and some horrible pictures. And then up in the right-hand corner, I saw, and I was going to talk about the law of karma the next day, and I saw the Red Cross sign. And the impulse arose, I could donate some money. And I saw that arise, and then I thought, well, why not? I can do that. And I was born in that moment as a person who practiced generosity. I look back on it, it feels good, I did that. I could have stayed in, whoa, this is terrible, and gone on and been born in the next moment more hopeless. So there's a way we are at the helm. In my youth, I worked on freighters, ocean freighters, and one of the things that I saw, and I was on pretty big ships, but coming up the coast of Africa from Cape Horn to Europe, we passed relatively close to a couple of super tankers. Those things are 3 football fields long. They go down 30 or 40 feet underwater, and they travel at 30 miles an hour. And in full emergency stop, they take 30 to 40 miles to stop. They are momentum. And sometimes my karmic destiny seems like that, right? It's just, but you could I imagine sometimes in a silly way, there's a little platform down near the stern that you can climb out onto, and you have a really nice canoe paddle. And you know the J, stroke, turn, stroke, that we have influence in our lives. Right? So how we can live more kindly and lovingly and have some capacity to change ourselves. And then just one line to this. And as our meditation deepens, sometimes we're given the grace, in a way, and one of my Catholic terms, the grace of, even for a moment, somehow or another, opening to the other end of the paradox. And those are the moments of great liberation, and they affect us profoundly. So I want to stop there and see if there's one person or maybe two who would like to comment or share. Please, would you come and get the mic? Or Paul, will you haul it around? And please say your name.
You're not first, you're last, Ricky Bobby. My name is Lance. Thank you for articulately defining presence and free will being the choice the minute we open our eyes to live in presence. That's the free will. And the last thing is there's a documentary called Minimizing, and I think that actually it's told to me that it's a good documentary for everyone to watch. It's called Minimizing.
What are we minimizing? Can you give us another hint, a little preview?
You got to go and check it out.
All right, that's good advertising. Great. Minimizing. Please.
My name is Tia. Robert, I find myself stuck in this place of awareness that I'm not asleep and yet not fully awake. And I get stuck there and I don't know how to get out.
Me too. However, if you were to become aware of the contact of your hands, of your right hand and the index finger and thumb holding that microphone, can you become any more awake than that? That's awake. It's aware. That's mindfulness. Now, it would be nice to have a moment of cosmic consciousness. That would be nice. Or your buttocks where they're pressing on the floor. When there's presence with that, that's, I think of it as complete practice. It's perfect in that moment. And if you thought, oh, I want it to be something else, I want to be more intense, or I want. But then if that thought becomes an object of awareness, that's what's happening. Does that make sense? It's back to the shorthand from Ajahn Chah. This moment is like this. That's what we can practice at least. This moment is like this. Is that any help? Yeah.
Getting there.
Just a quick question. You had said, the very last thing you said was, sometimes you can open up to the paradox, and I lost you there.
Try this as a good enough. May I recommend a book? I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. Nice name. Ruth Dennison spent several weeks or months with him. Jack Kornfield got to meet him. He was a cigarette salesman in Bombay who had some kind of profound utter awakening. And his articulation of what it's like to, oh, thank you, yeah. What it's like to be fully awake in the enlightened sort of way It's an amazing book to read. I Am That. And it's and it's possible for ordinary folks like thee and me to get a glimpse of that. It happens to people. And it's a very interesting and important glimpse because one then, there's a way that one realizes, oh, the way I see the world is fundamentally flawed because, thank you so much, because I keep thinking I'm this. And this is so convincing. And they say, Nisargadatta Maharaj is a great example of, there are people who somehow or another, and the Theravadan Buddhist world would say, well, practice. And there are stages of this awakening, and that there are people who become completely fluid in knowing I am with this, and I'm responsible for this, but this is not, the locus of identity shifts from this to this. And then one's only motivations are love and compassion. The only person that I think I've met such a person, his name was Tangpulu Sayadaw. I went to Burma, that's where that monk's bowl came from. And he was in Rangoon for 90 days each year, and I was there with him for a week. He got up with the monks at 5:30 or 6 maybe, and then there was chanting, and then the monks all went out. We went out and walked in the streets of Rangoon with our alms bowls, and then we came back, and then there was the one meal of the day. Actually, that came a little later. But anyway, around 8 o'clock, he was sitting in a room, and there were people lined up outside. It was like a ride at Disneyland. There were people lined up outside, and they'd come in one at a time, two at a time, a family, and there was lots of crying, and then he would teach these people individually, and then they would leave, and then he would do that until 11:30 when lunch happened, and then he would be gone for, I don't know, maybe an hour, and then he would meet with people until 9 o'clock at night, every day, 7 days a week, month by month. And the only way I could make sense of it was there was no self there. He was just caring. Quite interesting. I mean, kind of like jaw-dropping. Thanks. Oh, do we have children? Great. Bring them in. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, dear friends out on the internet. Let me give a little further invitation to the ritual on New Year's Eve. I think we're starting at 9. And it will be a ritual in which it's possible to express your grief. We'll have a stainless steel bowl and pebbles to drop into it, and you can participate to whatever degree you want. And then after that, we'll be having a refuge and precepts taking ceremony. Thank you, my dear. Hey. Good. Better than. Hello, little people, smaller people. May I hold your hand? Did you have Hope? Look, it's a little monkey. You're not a monkey? Oh, it's a talking monkey. Can I hold your finger? Let's do pinkies. All right, that's good. Technology is a bit flawed. So, these are real people to left and right. Came into being, living a lifetime. All right, you're not dolls? You're not dolls. How do you know?
We're not dolls.
You're not dolls.
Because we play with dolls.
You play with dolls. That makes sense. Do you think your dolls play with dolls? Oh, no. Please give the hand on the right a nice squeeze and think a kind thought for this person.
I wish a unicorn did that.
And the person on your left, give that hand a little squeeze and wish a kind thought for this person. And so to all of us in these circles, and our families and friends, and those people we think of as them, the enemy, recognizing that we are all on one short journey through our lives. And do we have someone to lead us in song? I see. Whenever you're ready.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Well, shall we do the candle blowing out thing today? Wait, not yet. Good job. Whoa, but your cheeks are going to blow up. So we can all probably think of something kind, loving that we'd like to wish. Please, everyone in the room and out there on the internet, take in a giant deep breath. 1, 2, 3, blow. Oh, yes, we did it once again. I felt air from behind me. Wow, that was cool. So thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you soon. That was amazing.